Good morning. Welcome to our class. If you have a Bible, if you would please open it to John chapter 10. John chapter 10. We have been going through the Gospels and trying to put them in a chronological order. Again, as we have pointed out before, sometimes only one writer deals with a particular event or a particular lesson that Jesus happens to be teaching. And in this case, we looked at the last couple of chapters, 9 and 10 of John, and John is the only one that records the previous chapter, the story of the healing of the blind man. And John is the only one that covers the information we'll be looking at here in John chapter 10. All right, before we get into the lesson, let's go to our Heavenly Father in a word of prayer. Our Father and God in heaven, we indeed are thankful for the many blessings that you give to us each and every day of our lives. We thank you especially for this period of time, a time in which we can open up your word together. We pray that as we look at your word together, that we might find the truths that are contained within it and then apply them to our lives as we teach those who are around about us. Be with all the classes going on this morning, be with the teachers and the students alike. We again pray to God that you might be with us in our endeavors. In the name of your Son we do pray. Amen. John chapter 10 gives the interesting story. We would almost parallel it with Psalm chapter 23 concerning the idea of the good shepherd, the shepherd watching over his sheep. So keeping that in mind, let's look at the first couple of verses in this this chapter. Again, John chapter 10. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. And a stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. All right, now I want to stop right there. We're going to give the explanation later on here as John continues in this account. This story, again, tells us, again, as we said, we could parallel this with Psalm chapter 23, talking about the shepherd leading his sheep. The indication here is that this is not a hired person to take care of the sheep. This is the owner of the sheep. As a result, he takes better care of the sheep than someone who is hired for that particular purpose. We see here that he gives some analogies that maybe if you're not at all knowing about sheep, may be new to you, but I think most of us in some way understand what he is trying to say here. First of all, whenever the sheep are not out in the pasture, there is a pen, an enclosure in which the sheep are placed for their protection. So again, the shepherd, understanding the need to protect his sheep, is going to provide such an enclosure for them. So the first thing here is that he is providing them with the care and the necessary provisions in order to take care of them, again, because he loves his sheep. We see here that the next part of this tells us that if you are acquainted with the shepherd, if you know the shepherd, if you care about the shepherd, then you're not going to be trying to climb over the fence. If you're climbing over the fence, then you are a thief or you are a robber or you intend to do some harm in some particular fashion. Again, I am, again, probably more recently, intrigued by the idea that God gives us answers sometimes to questions that we might have in other areas. There has been, over a number of years, controversy as to whether or not we should protect the borders of this country. This very clearly shows that the shepherd protects borders. There is a boundary in which he protects those that are on the inside, and that it is a deterrent to those who would otherwise try to enter without the shepherd's approval. If you don't have his approval, why in the world are you trying to enter? The idea is you are a thief or a robber in this situation, and therefore you should not be attempting it, but there are those people who do so. So the sheepfold, the walls, the barriers that are placed here are in order to protect the sheep themselves. If you enter in by the doorway, by the gate into the sheepfold, then you probably are someone who is given the authority to enter into the sheepfold. You ever been in a store or someplace and there's a sign on the door that says authorized personnel only? That sort of speaks volumes, doesn't it? It says, if you have no business being here, stay out. So that's the idea of boundaries, whether it's boundaries in our personal life, boundaries in our country, whatever the case might be. If you are not authorized to go into the sheepfold, then don't come in. If you're not authorized, you may not try coming through the door. You might try entering in over the walls, thinking that you might have easier access. Well, if you're doing that, then you don't have any authority to be there. You have no justification for being there. And as a result, you are trying to do harm and not good. The doorkeeper, as it says here, opens to the person who has authority to enter in. In this situation, we have a position where somebody is tending the door. Again, we would maybe, again, familiarize ourselves with a building that as you're going in, there is a checkpoint of some type, seeing if you have authorized business at that period of time. If you don't, then they will probably turn you away or say you have to go check with a higher authority to get permission to come in. So this is what is being said here. The doorkeeper will allow any authorized person in, but especially the shepherd. Why? Because the shepherd is the owner of the sheep and therefore is allowed access into the sheep. When this happens, of course, the sheep recognize the voice of the owner. There are books that are written by shepherds trying to explain some of these things. There are videos that maybe we have watched, and watching the interaction of sheep with the shepherd that is guiding them. Again, it's somewhat amazing to me that you can have hundreds of sheep and they tend to stay together. When you see sheep, the word that almost comes to mind is the word flock. They stay together. They understand that there is danger, but they also understand that there is safety in these numbers, and as long as you stay with the shepherd, then everything goes well. Again, paralleling this with the stories that sometimes Jesus says. Remember the story of the sheep that wanders away. Even a man had 100 of them. One wanders away. You think, well, that's you're stupid enough to wander away. I don't care about you anymore. That's not the care of this kind of a shepherd. He's going to go out looking for that sheep that has gone astray. So here is first of all, the picture of a caring shepherd who loves, protects, and wants to take care of his sheep, understanding that the sheep will primarily stay together. Why? They understand the safety. They understand that there is one person. There may be several if you have hirelings that will help you take care of these sheep, but primarily they are concerned about the voice of the shepherd. This one they have learned to trust. This one has guided them safely before. This one has possibly protected them from some type of wild animals or beasts. So they want to stick with the voice of this protector. And as it says here that he is the one that is capable of leading them out. Again, if you've seen pictures of this or videos of this, of a shepherd, whenever he begins to go in a certain direction, the sheep follow him. He is leading them. All right? It is possible to drive sheep like you drive cattle. Cattle aren't this way usually. Cattle, it's okay if you have a leader, maybe a particular animal that can lead them, but they don't tend to stay together. They want to wander off. Sheep are not that way. Once they hone in on the person that they are to follow, they tend to stay with that person. Now, can you drive sheep? Sure. You ever seen, again, the idea of the sheepdog? If the sheep start going off in the wrong direction, it's the sheepdog's responsibility to bring them back into the flock. But with most sheep, you don't have to do that. If they recognize the voice of the person that is leading them and they understand this person is there to protect them, they are going to follow rather easily. And again, it's intriguing to watch a shepherd with the sheep. It makes no difference where you're at. You can be walking through the streets of a city. Sometimes they have to, these shepherds go through small communities and so on. They just walk right through, and the sheep follow right after them. So it makes no difference the course or the direction that the leader is taking them, they are going to follow. Now, going back to Psalm 23, isn't that the same idea that even though he is leading us through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Again, why? His rod and his staff are there to protect me. Why is he going this way? Sheep don't usually ask that question. They just follow. All right? Why are you going through the valley of the shadow of death? Well, what's interesting about that is if we relate Jesus as being the good shepherd, the idea is that Jesus has gone through the valley of the shadow of death. And what happened? He came out alive on the other side. So the idea is that, what's the worst that could possibly happen to you in the valley of the shadow of death? You're going to die. So Jesus says in Revelation chapter 1, I was there. I was alive, and then I was dead, and now I'm alive forevermore. So it says this analogy comes in handy when we look at different parts of the Bible and understanding Jesus is not going to take us into an area that is dangerous to my soul. There are situations where following the master the good shepherd, may get us into physical harm. Looking again at the apostles, and we've been discussing this on Sunday evening a little bit, the idea of how many of the apostles got through this life in a natural death. And we don't have enough information to say, historically, we know this to be the case, but through tradition and sayings, we come to the conclusion that probably only one, John, of the original apostles, does not go through some type of martyrdom. So again, is Jesus leading the apostles that end up being persecuted, put to death? The idea is yes. Where did he lead them? He led them into the valley of the shadow of death. But they feared no evil, because again, they're going to come out alive on the other side. So again, a very beautiful analogy here. These sheep want to follow the good shepherd. They are not afraid. Wherever the good shepherd leads them, that is the direction that they are going to go. And so they are willing to follow him no matter what. But in verse 5 it says, and a stranger they simply will not follow. And again, you introduce into this picture. First of all, we have a very calm situation. The man comes to the sheepfold. He enters in properly, therefore he is authorized to do so. Immediately when he's on the inside, the sheep recognize his voice. And whenever he leads them out, they are willing to follow. All right, now introduce into this the stranger. Someone who does not care about the sheep, is only interested in gaining whether it's the value of the sheep or whatever they're looking for. They're not interested in the sheep themselves. And the stranger comes in, they are now startled. Instead of following, they try to go away from the stranger. All right, now that's the picture here of introducing a stranger. They will not follow the stranger. No matter how he tries to coerce them, they're not going to follow, because he is not one that they have learned to trust. And so they are going to try to scatter when he does this. All right, yes, Karen.
I think what's saying how we have to have it, and my husband's voice is the only voice they will respond to. But if for some reason he can't be there with the feed, and I have to, they won't respond to me, but they will be tempted by the feed when they see it.
Yes, yeah, they understand that. They understand that. It's interesting to see how different animals respond. You have to gain the trust of most animals for them to, in any way, come up to you. Part of whenever I was working up at the camp that I used to work at, a couple of weeks I was responsible for taking care of the horses. Now, the first time I approached the horses, they're a little skittish of me. But as you pointed out, you rattled the can, and I understand what that's all about. And they're going to tentatively come up close to you because you've got something that they really want. But that doesn't mean that they trust you yet. And so they're still skittish around you. And the more that you work with them, the more you handle them, the more you pet them, the more that you are in direct contact with them, they begin to trust you. And then pretty soon, all you have to do, after you're there a couple of days, all you have to do is walk to the part of the crowd that we feed them, and all you have to do is just shout out their names. And boy, here they come. Because they've learned that they can trust you. But not only can they trust you, but they know that you are going to provide them with something that they want. So it's a matter of trust. But you just don't get that trust by first walking up to them. Okay. Anybody else have thoughts, comments you want to bring out here? Yes, Roger.
Well, this verse 6 is the end of this discussion. And Jesus leaves them with an illustration. But they didn't understand what he was trying to tell them
Sure.
or teach them.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting because in this context, I feel that these would have been Jews listening to maybe even followers, but they didn't understand what he wanted to bring out.
Okay, again, we have the advantage of what we call hindsight. We've we've got all the teaching of Jesus, including teaching that happens after the death of Jesus, all the writings of the New Testament. So we are able to look back on this, and we can easily say, well, why didn't they understand? Well, it starts with a basis of what you are anticipating, and are you allowing your anticipation or your preconceived idea influencing you? All right, this is what we find in relationship, especially to the kingdom, the coming kingdom. What was it going to be like? Jesus had to do a lot of teaching on this. By the way, look at most of the parables of Jesus. Again, the same idea that we're looking at in this context. This is an illustration. Jesus is not saying, I'm a shepherd and you're a sheep. What he's saying is the analogy is the same. You have a good shepherd and you have a flock that wants to follow him, and they must trust him. And as long as he is protecting them and guiding them, then they are willing to follow. Okay, we see that because of all the information that we've got. Look at the people at this period of time. What do they want? What's that?
Earthly kingdom.
I didn't see you there.
Earthly kingdom.
Okay, but they probably aren't thinking so much of a kingdom right now. What are they thinking about mostly? It deals with the kingdom, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It does deal with the kingdom. But what's their plague? What's their problem right now? What's that? The Roman government is the problem. All right. In their estimation, how do you get rid of in their estimation, a worldly problem? You got to fight it. In order to fight him, what do you have to have? You have to have a king and a kingdom and an army. Okay, that's what they're looking for. They have been anticipating the coming of someone who is of the family of David. David is a king from the family of Judah, who is described in other places as the Messiah. Now, we say Christ and Messiah, and immediately we think of something spiritual in nature. What does Messiah mean? Anybody? What does the word Messiah mean? Does it have a spiritual or religious connotation to the name Messiah? Anybody know what it means? Same thing as Christ. Christ is the Greek form of Messiah. So you have in the Greek, Christos. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew is Messiah. They mean the same thing. And so whenever we hear Messiah or Christ, we immediately go off into the spiritual concept. They didn't have that, again, that hindsight that we've got to look back on this. When they hear Messiah, they hear the word anointed one. Okay? Who do you anoint? Well, we know that the priests, whenever they came into their authority, they were anointed with oil. Someone else is always anointed. Who's that? The king. Okay, now, if the word anointed comes into the picture, Messiah, in the Old Testament, he's been anointed by God to do what? Immediately, you're thinking king. Why do you immediately think king and not priest? Because both are anointed.
They already had priests.
Huh?
They already had priests.
Yeah, they already had priests, but they had kings too.
Not a Levite.
Ah, there's one thing that's important. Was that what you were going to say?
I was just going to say, he's king and deliverer, from the Roman Empire. So we're thinking, anointed king.
Okay, but understand the point. When you hear Messiah in the Old Testament, again, we got to get rid of our religious title, Messiah, and look at what the word means, the anointed one. Okay, when you think about that, the anointed one and the Messiah, the promised one that was coming, could not be a priest. Why? The priest had to come from the family of Levi, but more particularly, the priest had to come from the family of Aaron, who was, of course, a descendant of Levi. All right, so you're not looking for a priest. You are looking for the anointed one who was going to come from what family? David, who was from the tribe of Judah, not the family of Levi. So immediately, you don't think of something religious in nature. You think of something political or worldly or government. This is what you're thinking. And who was David? The one that led them to great amounts of power. Solomon would extend the kingdom out a little bit further, but David is the one that got them to the position that they were in. He was the one that challenged all these world powers that were around him, and he's the one that came out on top. What are they looking for? They are under this pressure, if you will, from another government, the Roman government, and they don't like it. They don't like it at all. So what do they want? To be free from that oppression of the Roman government. How are they going to succeed in doing that? Their Messiah, their anointed one, is going to lead them. So up until the coming of Jesus, everything related to the Messiah in their world view is that he is going to be a political leader that is going to conquer any nation that was giving them problems. Does that sound like a spiritual leader? So if you're looking for a powerful king, you're not thinking spiritual in nature. Why do you think Jesus spent so much time delivering the message through parables about the kingdom? He explains what the reason for the parables are given, because you understand the analogy, but you don't understand the message. You hear, but you don't hear. You hear, but you don't understand. You see, but you're still blinded. All right, so they're looking, they got the right perspective. There is someone who is going to come. This someone is going to be a powerful person that all the nations are going to respect in some particular way. But their thinking is physical. So Jesus has to give these parables, these analogies, to point out there's something else you haven't been looking. Is Jesus going to be a powerful king? Yes. Interesting point. Does Jesus ever set up that kingdom while he is alive on the earth? No. They don't understand that. So whenever he makes a statement that not even Hades or death is going to stop him from building his kingdom, they're scratching their heads. If you don't establish your kingdom while you're alive, how in the world are you going to establish it after you're dead? How about a resurrection from the dead? Is that even in their radar? That is so far out of their perspective that they got no idea what he's talking about. Do we? Hopefully by this time, after reading the Bible and after reading especially the New Testament. And by the way, this goes back again to what Paul frequently uses. He uses that word mystery. Where's the mystery? It's in the Old Testament. If after reading the New Testament, you still think it's a mystery, read again. You've missed it. Because Paul says we came to answer the mystery. We came to reveal what they were looking for in the Old Testament. But to reveal it in a way that the people aren't expecting. So now, in this picture, as we're going to get to in just a moment, starting in verse 6, but as we look at this, we are tainted in our vision, tainted in a good way, by the way, because we understood the mystery. But they are tainted by only having this aspect of the Old Testament. And therefore, they don't have the privilege of understanding that Jesus is not talking about a man who owns sheep. There's something else behind it. And this is similar in nature to the parables. Why? Because they won't understand everything he's talking about. But this is where, again, any other thoughts up to verse 6? All right, let's pick up with verse 6. This figure of speech, Jesus spoke to them, but they did not understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. Can you understand without understanding? You understand about sheep, don't you? You know, we can see videos, we can talk to shepherds, and we can get a flavor of who can lead the sheep, who can't lead the sheep, where the sheep are protected, where they're in danger, how do you protect them? We can understand that. Do you understand what he's saying behind the picture here? All right. They understood the point, but they don't understand the meaning. All right, now, what those things were which he had been saying to them. Verse 7, Jesus therefore said to them again, truly, truly, I say to you, now here's interesting, look at it. First of all, you would think the first thing he would say was what? I'm the shepherd. Did he say that? No. I'm the door to the sheepfold. Again, maybe you haven't caught that before. That's very striking. Because again, as I pointed out earlier, I started you with Psalm 23. And there we have this picture of the Good Shepherd. Now, this is where you can't take literally a parable or an analogy. Why? Because they don't always line up. Because in the context, Jesus is the door. And what else is he? The shepherd. All right. Each of these signifies something. Most people are confused when they come to the book of Revelation, because most people are still reading literally. And if you come to the book of Revelation and you keep things literal, boy, you are going to be confused, and there's no doubt about it. So John starts off almost the first verse, I think it's verse 2 or 3 actually. He says that these things, as the King James Version says, these things are going to be signified. Signified. What's he saying? I'm going to use signs, illustrations, analogies. That's how you signify something. We use these things all the time and don't even give it a second thought. One thing that just, again, crazy how things pop in my mind. We use the analogy or the statement, he's deader than a doornail. Right? Now, you may not even understand the analogy, but we have this figure now in our mind that he is as dead can be. Right? You understand that. Do you know where the idea of dead as a doornail came from? Anybody? When you making a door, now keeping in mind, this is when carpentry skills weren't as skillful and so on. So let's say you're making a door for your cabin. And you just take a couple of boards and you stand them up and then you put a couple of boards crosswise and you nail them. What's the door doing? Opening and closing and have pressure put on it from the outside by wind and so on. What's eventually going to happen? The nails are going to work free. And you're going to have these nails starting to pull out. So what you got to do, you got to take the door off and pound the nails back in. But now you even have a bigger mess. Why? Because the holes, because of time, have been rounded out a little bit. So the door's not even going to last as long as it did the first time you hung it up. So in order to do that, how do you keep the door from wiggling loose? Well, you get a little bit longer nail than normal. Normally, you don't want points of nails sticking out into a room that you're going to be in. You don't want to hit that door with those sharp spikes. But you drive the nails all the way through, and then you deaden the nail. What do? You cinch it over. You knock it down. All right. Now you have the head of the nail, which isn't going to allow it to work free. But now you also have the cinched point that comes down and grabs a hold of the wood. That's deadening a nail. So when it says you're deader than a doornail, it means that nail is not coming back. It's in there for good. All right. So now we can understand how sometimes we don't even know the meaning of a phrase. We hear them all the time and we understand, okay, this is sort of what it's referring to. Give me the whole 9 yards. Another expression we understand that means give me everything you got. All right. It's dealing with fabrics and cloths. 9 yards of material was considered about what you would put on a bolt of cloth. So give me the whole 9 yards. Give me the whole bolt of cloth. All right. So again, we understand, but yet, okay, I don't even know where that came from. But we understand it. All right. In this situation, we have the analogy Jesus is giving, but now we have to find out what is he signifying. What message is behind this? And by the way, in order to do that, you have to have a basic working knowledge of the language you're dealing with. We use phrases in America, as do other parts of the world, use phrases that when you hear the phrase literally, you say, what? It just doesn't make sense to you. In their language, those words have a meaning that we might not get. All right? So, first of all, you have to have a basic working language of the language you're trying to prescribe. When John said these things are going to be signified, in essence, he is saying, I am going to be putting them in a code. If you're not familiar with the code, you're going to read through this book and you're going to scratch your head and say, what in the world is he talking about? How do you get a message? By the way, John is exiled on the island of Patmos, not allowed to write a written message concerning Jesus Christ or things of this nature because he's there because of the preaching of the gospel. How do you get a message off to the people? It's got to be in some type of code that the Romans won't understand because they won't let it off the island if they understood it. Because what is the basic thrust of the book of Revelation? Rome is eventually going to fall. You tell the Romans your government is going to fall, and they're not going to like that so much. They're going to do everything possible to keep you from getting that message off. So John has to put it in a code that Christians will understand, but most Romans won't understand. And what is the code book? When you're reading through the book of Revelation, if you've read the Old Testament, your mind is going to say, oh, that's where that's found, that's where that's found, that's where that's found. Why in the book of Revelation does Paul use the word Babylon? Is Babylon a country in existence during the time of the Roman Empire and when Jesus was alive? The answer is, it ceased to exist hundreds of years before that. Who would know about Babylon? Jews. Why? That was a terrible point in their history. God allowed the Babylonians to come in and take them away from their country. They won't forget that. That's written in their word. So, whenever John says Babylon, he's not talking about the kingdom that existed hundreds of years before this. So if he's not talking about that, and he's talking about something present, what is similar to Babylon? Rome. You got it? When you look at it from the perspective, and John tells you that within the opening verses of Revelation, and we totally forget that one. As I pointed out to several people, we don't want to start with chapter 1 when we're reading Revelation. We want to start with chapter 20, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Right? That's where everybody wants to start. What do you want to start there for? If you don't understand what the 1,000 years reign of Christ in a kingdom that you don't understand, then you're going to be thinking like these people. There's going to be an earthly Messiah, an earthly king, like David, sitting on the throne in Jerusalem, and he's going to conquer all the world. That's what most people get from the book of Revelation, because they didn't read the opening verses. In this picture, Jesus is saying, okay, let me help clarify this a little bit, but you're not going to get it. You're not in a position to get it yet, because it's still a mystery. But let me explain it to you in a little bit. Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. First of all, the door is the entrance, the way to get to the sheep. Jesus is the door. If you're looking for a different door, there is none. There is only one door. And Jesus is that door. Are they going to get that message at this point in time? No, not yet. They're probably scratching their head and say, you don't look like a door to me. All right, if you're taking this literally, you're not a door. Well, if you take it literally, he's not a shepherd either. But you're not taking it literally. This is, as he pointed out, is a figure of speech. All right, so he's the door. In what way? All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. Everybody who came before him. Now, interesting, there is a slight transition here. He's not the door, but he's the one that's drawing their attention. He's the one that's speaking. Everybody who has come before Christ, everybody, is not the real thing. They're strangers. All right? And by the way, we want to limit this to imposters and false people. No, this includes everybody, including Moses. Think about that. Can you can imagine telling these Jews at this period of time that Moses is not the one that you should be following? Think about that. They would hang you up right away. You would not have it. They would stone you to death right there on the spot. But in a way, Jesus is saying, everybody who's come before me, Moses, Elijah, everybody who's come before me is not the voice you need to be listening to. And that's what Moses said. There's a prophet like me coming. Whenever he comes, you listen to him. no longer listen to Moses. All right, there's a lot more. We got to stop there, though. They're coming through the doors. Thank you for your time today.